Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm really glad we're finally getting to this deep dive.
Yeah, this should be fun.
Yeah, because I know a lot of you have been asking about it, just kind of brushing up on common English mistakes. And you sent in some great material.
Really interesting stuff.
Yeah, so basically our mission here is to help you guys, sound even more fluent in English.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Because even small errors can make a big difference in how clearly and confidently we can express ourselves.
totally. And, one of the first things that popped out to me from the stuff you sent was that classic he versus she mix-up. I mean, it seems basic. Right?
It does. But you'd be surprised how many people, even those who've been speaking English for a while, still trip up on it.
I know I've done it myself, especially when I'm tired or speaking quickly.
Right. It's easy to let those slip, especially if your native language doesn't have gender-specific pronouns.
Exactly. So what's the trick to getting it right consistently?
Well, the source we're looking at suggests something called picture practice.
Picture practice. What's that?
It's all about visualization. So like if you're about to use he in a sentence, just quickly picture a man in your mind.
Oh, I see. And if I'm going to say she, I picture a woman.
Exactly. It's a simple but surprisingly effective technique.
I like it. It's like a little mental cheat sheet.
Exactly. Okay, so moving on, let's talk about prepositions. The tiny words that can cause huge headaches.
Oh, don't even get me started on prepositions. Good at or good in, married to or married with. It's a minefield.
I know, right? But instead of trying to memorize a bunch of complex rules, this source suggests focusing on memorizing entire phrases.
So instead of stressing over why a certain preposition is used, I just learned the whole chunk, like good at, married to, on Monday, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Think of it like learning a song lyric. You don't analyze each individual word, you just learn the whole phrase.
Makes sense. Repetition is key, right?
Absolutely. The more you hear and use those correct phrases, the more naturally they'll come to you.
Got it. So next time I see you, I might just be muttering good at, married to, on Monday, under my breath.
Hey, whatever works right.
Okay, so another common mistake, the material highlighted, is forgetting that sneaky little is at the end of verbs in the third person singular.
Ah, yes, the classic he go versus he goes dilemma.
Even I mess that up sometimes. And this source suggests practicing out loud with phrases like, he goes, she likes, it works.
Yep. It might sound a little silly, but trust me, it works. It's like practicing scales on a piano. Repetition builds muscle memory.
So it's all about training our tongues and our brains to automatically produce those correct forms.
Exactly. Speaking of training, how about we tackle the overuse of very?
Oh boy, that's my specialty. I am the queen of very.
We all do it. But the thing is, relying too heavily on very can actually weaken your language.
Really? How so?
Well, native English speakers often use stronger, more descriptive words instead of constantly reaching for very.
Okay, that makes sense. So instead of saying very good, I could say excellent.
Exactly. Or instead of very big, you could say huge.
Wow, those words do pack a punch. It's like the difference between a gentle tap and a firm handshake.
Exactly. So the challenge here is to actively expand your vocabulary and start using those stronger, more descriptive words in your everyday speech.
I like that idea. It's like giving my language a power boost.
Exactly. Now let's move on to another common mistake that can really trip people up. The dreaded direct translation trap.
Oh, I know that one all too well.
Yeah.
Especially when I'm tired or trying to speak too quickly, I catch myself translating word for word from my native language.
It's a natural instinct, but it can lead to some pretty awkward phrasing in English.
The example that comes to mind is saying, I have 25 years, instead of, I am 25 years old.
Yeah.
That's a direct translation from some Romance languages.
Exactly. It makes sense grammatically, but it just doesn't sound natural in English.
It lacks that native flow.
Yeah.
It's like trying to force a square peg into a round hole.
Exactly. So the key here is to shift your thinking from translation to thinking in English.
So instead of trying to translate everything in my head, I need to learn to think and express myself directly in English.
Precisely. And one of the best ways to do that is to immerse yourself in authentic English content as much as possible.
So watching movies, TV shows, listening to podcasts, reading books, all that good stuff.
Exactly. The more you surround yourself with natural English, the more those phrases and patterns will start to feel intuitive.
It's like training your ear and your brain to recognize and reproduce those natural rhythms and expressions.
Exactly. Soaking it all in.
It's about absorbing the language in its natural habitat.
That's a great way to put it. And as you do that, you'll start to notice how native speakers express themselves. The phrases they use, the way they structure their sentences. It's like building a mental library of English expressions that you can then draw on in your own conversation.
So it's not just about memorizing vocabulary or grammar rules. It's about developing a feel for the language.
Exactly. And that takes time and practice, but it's so worth it.
Absolutely. So to recap, we've covered 5 common English mistakes. Mixing up he and she, struggling with those tricky prepositions, forgetting the as in third-person singular verbs, overusing very, and falling into the direct translation trap.
And we've talked about some practical strategies for overcoming each of those challenges.
It's like we're equipping our listeners with a toolkit for better English communication.
I like that analogy because it really is about giving people the tools they need to express themselves clearly and confidently.
And as we move into the next part of our deep dive, we're going to unpack some more specific examples and tips to help you refine your English even further.
It's all about taking those skills to the next level.
Now, before we jump into those specifics, let's pause for a moment and consider something I've been thinking about. As we've been talking about these common mistakes, it struck me that there's a bigger lesson here that goes beyond just grammar.
Oh, I totally agree. It's about communication as a whole.
Exactly. By becoming more aware of these common pitfalls in English, we can actually become better communicators in any language.
That's a really interesting point. When you start to recognize those subtle nuances, those little things that can trip people up, you become more attuned to them in other languages too.
It's like you're developing this heightened sensitivity to how language works, how it can be used and misused to convey meaning.
I like that analogy. It's about becoming more aware, more conscious of the power of language.
So in a way, this isn't just about achieving perfect English. It's about becoming a more effective communicator overall.
Absolutely. It's about taking ownership of our communication and striving for clarity in every interaction.
This deep dive has definitely given me a fresh perspective on language learning.
Me too.
Yeah,
It's amazing how much we can learn about ourselves and how we connect with the world through language.
it's a journey of discovery.
And it's a journey that's full of fascinating twists and turns.
Well said. So for our listener who's on this journey of mastering English, I hope this deep dive has provided some valuable tools and insights to help you navigate those common pitfalls.
Absolutely. Remember, it's a continuous process of learning and growing.
There's always room for improvement.
And that's what makes it so exciting.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll delve into some more specific examples and tips to help you fine-tune your English even further. Stay tuned.
We'll be right back.
All right, so we're back and ready to dig into some more specific examples of these common English mistakes, starting with those pesky prepositions,
Ah, yes. The little words that can cause big problems.
like good at versus good in.
Right. We say good at when we're talking about someone's skill or ability, like, she's good at playing the piano.
But we say good in when we're describing someone's performance or behavior
Yeah.
in a specific situation, like he was good in the meeting.
Exactly. It's a subtle difference, but it's important.
And then there's married to versus married with. I remember being so confused by that one when I was learning English.
It's a common mistake. But in English, we always say married to.
Why is that?
Married to emphasizes the union between two people. It implies a legal and emotional bond, a sense of commitment. Married with just doesn't have that same weight.
It sounds strange.
It does. It's like saying married with benefits. It just doesn't convey the same sense of permanence.
Got it. So married to, it is.
Absolutely. Now let's revisit those third-person singular verbs and that all-important nux.
I'm ready to conquer this one once and for all.
Remember, practice makes perfect. Keep repeating those phrases. He goes, she likes, it works, until they become second nature.
It's like a mantra for English fluency.
Exactly. Repetition is key. It's how we train our brains to automatically produce those correct forms.
And speaking of training, what about that challenge to use stronger, more descriptive words instead of relying on very all the time?
Oh, that's a great way to level up your language skills.
But how do I actually do it? It's so easy to fall back on very out of habit.
I know, it takes conscious effort. But here's a tip. Focus on one area of your life where you use very a lot. Maybe it's your lighting or your everyday conversations.
Okay, so let's say it's my writing. What do I do?
Go through your writing and highlight every single very you see.
Got it. Now what?
Now comes the fun part. For each very, you've highlighted brainstorm a list of alternative words that are stronger and more descriptive. Instead of very happy, maybe you could use ecstatic or overjoyed.
I love that. It's like swapping out a dull tool for a shiny new one.
Exactly. You're upgrading your vocabulary and making your language more vivid and impactful in the process.
It's like giving my words a makeover.
Exactly. And the more you do it, the more those stronger words will become part of your natural vocabulary.
Okay, now let's circle back to that direct translation trap. I know this could be a tough one to break, especially if your native language is very different from English.
You're right. It's a common struggle. But remember, the key is to shift your thinking from translation to thinking in English.
Easier said than done, right?
I know it takes time and effort, but the more you immerse yourself in authentic English content, the easier it will become.
So movies, TV shows, podcasts, books, all of that.
Exactly. Surround yourself with the language and let it soak in. Pay attention to how native speakers express themselves, the phrases they use, the way they structure their sentences.
It's like building a mental database of English expressions.
Exactly. And the richer that database is, the less you'll need to rely on direct translation.
It's about developing an intuitive feel for the language.
That's the goal. And it's an ongoing process. But with consistent practice and exposure, you'll get there.
It's fascinating how these seemingly simple mistakes can actually reveal so much about the complexities of language learning.
Absolutely. It's not just about memorizing rules. It's about understanding the nuances of how language works, how it can be used to convey meaning and create connections,
It's about training our brains to think in new ways.
and to appreciate the beauty of linguistic diversity.
Well said. So for our listener who's on this journey of mastering English, I hope this deep dive has provided some valuable tools and insights.
It's all about understanding the challenges, embracing the learning process, and ultimately enjoying the incredible journey of language acquisition.
It's about celebrating the small victories and never giving up on the pursuit of fluency.
And remember, mistakes are part of the process. Don't be afraid to make them. Embrace them as opportunities to learn and grow.
Wise words. It's been fantastic exploring this topic with you.
Likewise, it's always a pleasure to delve into the intricacies of language.
And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into common English mistakes. I hope you've enjoyed the journey as much as we have.
And I hope you've gained some valuable insights and strategies to help you refine your English skills even further.
Remember, language learning is an ongoing adventure. Embrace the challenges, celebrate the victories, and most importantly, never stop exploring the amazing world of language.
That's it for today, folks. Happy language learning.
You know, as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm realizing there's like a bigger picture here.
Oh, for sure. It's not just about perfecting our grammar in one specific language.
Right, it's about something more fundamental.
Communication. Exactly. If we can train ourselves to spot these common errors in English, it can actually make us better communicators overall.
That's a really good point. Like it's about developing this awareness of the subtle ways language can trip us up.
Exactly. And that awareness can carry over to any language we're learning or speaking.
It's just like we're building this sensitivity to the nuances of language in general.
Yeah. How it works, how it can be used and misused to get our point across.
It's about becoming more conscious of the power of language, the impact our words can have.
Exactly. So this isn't just about speaking perfect English.
It's about using language effectively and thoughtfully, no matter what language we're speaking.
Absolutely. Taking ownership of our communication and always striving for clarity.
This deep dive has been eye-opening, I have to say.
Me too. It's a good reminder that language learning is so much more than just memorizing rules.
It's about expanding our understanding of how we connect with the world through language.
Beautifully said. So for all of you out there who are on this journey of mastering English,
Remember, it's a journey.
exactly. Embrace the challenges, enjoy the process.
And never be afraid to make mistakes.
Mistakes are our teachers, after all.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's been a pleasure diving into this topic with you.
Likewise. Always a joy to explore the intricacies of language.
And to all our listeners out there, keep practicing, keep learning, and keep those questions coming.
Happy language learning, everyone.
That's it for this deep dive. See you next time.